In this project, I'm going to show you how to do a random generator web page. Mine is going to be to generate ideas for a party theme, but yours could be anything from a hobby idea generator to a story idea generator or a team name generator. Have a think about what you would like to do, and I'll show you how to code the basics of it. So my one here has a button. Whenever I hover over the button, it changes color to make it obvious I'm hovering. And when I click on it, it will come up with an idea for a party. So angry meerkats could be the theme, or enraged dogs, or friendly angels. But you get the idea. So it comes up. So basically the idea is it has a long list of adjectives and a long list of nouns, and it picks one and mashes them together. So let's get started. Can you go to Google and type in JS, just the letters J and S, Fiddle, F-I-D-D-L-E, and it should come up with the result, JSFiddle Code Playground, and if you click on that. So let me just explain what JSFiddle is. It's basically a very, very useful website that you can type your web development code here, and the result will appear here. So for example, at a very, very simple level, I can just type hello and hit run, and the result will appear over here. It's not very interesting, obviously, at the moment, but we can improve that. So the first thing I'd like you to do at JSFiddle is to create yourself an account. So if you click sign in here, and then you can click on sign up. Okay, so hopefully you've paused and done that. The next thing I'd like you to do is to click on the settings over here and click on tabs, columns. So basically, again, I'll just type the hello and I'll explain here. Basically, there are multiple different languages that you will be typing code in. The main ones are HTML and CSS, and in fact, I'm just going to drag CSS over there because we're not using JavaScript for this particular mini project. So HTML is like the content of your page, the text, the images, those sorts of things, and CSS is the style, basically making it look good. So we can flick back and forth between those two and we can see the result over here. So just again, you go to settings, click on tabs, columns, and then click away. Now I just want to explain quickly how the saving system works in JSFiddle. So every time I make a change or even just hit save, you'll probably notice that the number on the end here, it might be hard to see, but it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. This is because JSFiddle uses something called version control, which means that every single time you save it, all your previous copies are saved as well. So if you decide that, oh no, I completely messed up what I'm doing, I want to go back to version 1 instead of version 2, I can just put that in the bar here and it will go back to the previous version. Also, if you click over here on the blue icon and go to your fiddles, you'll see that it will save, it's only got one obviously, but it will save all of your projects here, and if you click on there it will go to the latest version. So for me it's version 2 up there. So the heading will be an H1, and I will write in there, I'll tab in and write party theme generator, and now when I hit save it should run automatically and there's our heading. Remember, it won't look very good at this stage because we haven't added the CSS styles, we're just doing HTML at this stage. Now the second thing is the button that we're going to press to generate the theme. It won't work yet, but at least we can display it on to the page here. So we just type button, and inside that we can just say what we want written on the button, which would, for me, would be generate new theme. And if we hit save, you'll see we now have a button that has some default styles that I don't think look very good for this, but we can change those later. And obviously clicking it does nothing. at the moment, but that's okay. We then need a paragraph where we are going to put the result of what we click on the button. So I'll tab in again, and when we start, before we're going to actually replace that text with something once we press the button, but for the moment I'll just click question, or just write question marks there. And the final thing we need is the picture down the bottom. So I'll say image source equals, and for mine, I'm going to search for disco party clip art. I'll go to images, and I want to go to tools and color and transparent, because I don't want it to have a white square around it, for example. So I'm going to choose this one. I'll right click on it and say copy image address, and I will paste it back in here and hit save again. And remember, if you want that to be wider or less wide, you can put a width here. I'll just say 500 pixels, and but you can play around with that however wide you would like it. So as we are talking about styles, we'll go across to CSS, and the first thing I am going to do is look at some of the background styles, which, as you'll know, we use the body tag here. And I am going to, the gradient is not a background color, it's actually acts like a background image. So I'm going to say background image and radial gradient, red, green, blue. So you can put different colors, you can copy and paste these sorts of colors. Oops. So, you know, you get those sorts of colors from color picker if you wish, but I'm just going to go with those ones there. Oops, image, need the full word there. Okay, so as you can see, that's going to give me a radial gradient. I would like the height to actually be a bit more for each one of those. So I'm going to say the height is 800 pixels, and you'll see that has stretched this radial gradient down quite a bit. The next thing I would like is for everything to be in the center. So again, we can just use text align center, C-E-N-T-E-R. And the color of the text, because of the background, I would like it to be white. Okay, so that's already looking a lot closer to what we had in the example one. So we'll go over to Google Fonts, click on Fonts for Developers, see available fonts. Okay, so just having a look over here, I think my font, you can look through and find a font that you like, but the one that I got, I think, was called Titan 1. Yes, this is the one that I got. So I'm going to clear out any styles that I have over on the right hand side here, and then go down, click on Titan 1, and select regular. And then we remember, if you'll remember, we copy this between the two style tags that we don't need, and we can put that at the top here to import that font. Okay, we can now, if we want that for our heading, we can say H1 font family Titan 1, and that looks quite nice there. However, as you'll remember, in case we can't load that font, we should say whether we want sans serif, serif, monospace, or cursive, etc. to fall back on. So that's taken that warning away. The second thing would be to think about what font size we want. I would like mine to be a bit bigger. So we'll try 70 pixels. I think that looks much better for my purposes. For my party theme generator. I may even just want a tiny bit more space between some of the letters in that title. It's really sort of squished together. So we can put in the H1, within the H1 tag here, letter spacing, and maybe just add 2 pixels, extra pixels between each letter. I think that looks a little bit better. It's sort of widened it out a little bit. The last thing I'm going to do is change the P tag, so that if you remember, the paragraph tag is just where we're putting the result of whatever comes out of the party generator, and it's just question mark, question mark, question mark at the moment. But I'm going to also make, I will just copy this actually. We will make some slight changes though. Okay, I might just put 1 pixel spacing and we'll make it smaller, so 40 pixels. And save that. And the final thing I think we'll do is, I would like that to be yellow, just to differentiate it from the heading a little bit. And remember, when you're putting in these colors, you can go to color picker and have a more precise color if you wish. We are going to make this button look much better. It sort of, at the moment, looks really out of place. It doesn't fit the general sort of style. And it looks like a generic button that you'd see on a form to purchase something on Amazon or something like that. So let's make it look a little bit more interesting and exciting for our purposes. So if you remember, the HTML tag is button, so we can go in here and put in some styles for a button. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, I actually don't want this to have a background color. So I'm just going to say background none. And you'll see that that actually takes away that sort of weird, sort of grey color that was on the back there. The border, I'm not really happy with how it looks. I'd probably like it to be white. So I'm going to say border equals 3 pixels, solid white. And we probably also want the color to be white as well, so that'll be the text. Already that's matching the theme a lot better, but I'd probably like it to be a bit bigger as well. So I will say font size is 20 pixels. That's definitely looking better. I would like some padding. Now remember, the padding is the space between the content and the border inside, and the margin is the space on the outside. So I would like padding inside between the border and the text. So I will say padding is 20 pixels. There we go. So that's looking, making it a much bigger button. And the font family, I'm not going to get a Google font. I'm just going to choose a font that I know comes in most web browsers, and you can Google search for web safe fonts to get a list of these. It's not the most interesting font in the world, but it's a sans serif font called Verdana. So just sort of, it looks a little bit different, but also kind of matches, in my mind anyway, from my, I'm not an art or a design teacher, but it seems to match a little bit better than the other fonts that I looked at. So now this button is hopefully looking a lot better. Now the final thing that I'd like to do with the button from a looks perspective is make it do something special when we hover on it. So we're going to go down here below the button and we're going to write some CSS code for button when it's in a hover state. And the way you do that is to write the word button and then put a colon and then hover. And that means that these styles will be applied if the mouse is over the button or if the pointy end of the mouse is over the button. So let's have a look at what I want. I think in that case I want the background to be white. And the effect that I'm after is that it will sort of like invert. So the background will go from whatever's behind it to white, and the text will go to whatever's behind it. Now, instead of going to whatever's behind it, I'm just going to pick green because that's a lot easier to do. So I'm going to say that the color, which will be of the text when we're hovering, will be dark green. And so it should have that sort of effect that we see. I mean, maybe it's more red behind it. We could go dark red. But the effect that I want is for it to sort of invert. Yeah, maybe that looks better. So the idea is that when it's hovering, the background goes from dark to light and the text goes from light to dark. That is our hover. Let's start tackling the most interesting part of the whole project, which is how do we make this button change this text here when we click it. Let's go and have a look in the HTML. Now the HTML here we have the button and the paragraph. Now in our JavaScript code we're about to write, we're going to need to know exactly which button and which paragraph to edit. And so we have to give these two elements what we call an ID. So if we say button and ID equals, now this can be any name that we give this particular button. I'm just going to call it BTN, but you could call it, 1 or click button or whatever it is. And I'm going to give this P element an ID as well. And I'm going to call this the idea. You could call this the answer or the whatever you like. But now in our JavaScript, when we write code, we can actually we can access those two things. Okay, so let's go over now into the JavaScript thing and let's write some code. So as a very first challenge, why don't we actually on page load in the JavaScript here, why don't we change this text to something else, just as a proof of concept. So the idea is that in the JavaScript here, you can write code that will dynamically change this page. So it's going to take the idea paragraph and change it to something else. So let's do that to start with. So the JavaScript for that would be document. So that gets the document is the entire web page. So you've got document dot get element by ID, and each one of those words after the first one you'll notice has a capital. Document.get element by ID, idea, oops. So what this line of code does is it goes to the web page and it gets this paragraph here that we've given the ID of idea. So we now have that paragraph. And now we need to get inner HTML. So the inner HTML of that equals, and we can set it to anything we like. So I'm going to change it to changed by the JavaScript. Okay, let's see if that works. So we hit save, and you'll see that this code just automatically runs at the start of the program, and we have gotten the document and then the element of ID idea and gotten the inner HTML and set it to equal changed by the JavaScript. Okay, so that's a good first step, but we don't really want that to happen when we load the page. Let's make that happen when we click the button. So in JavaScript, rather than just having code that runs straight away, we can make what we call a function. Now, a function is just a bit of code that we give a name, and we can call that code by name at any time. In Python, if you've done Python before, we write it with a def for define. But in JavaScript, we would write it as function, and ours is going to be called generate idea. Generate idea like this. Now again, in JavaScript, when we have names that have more than one word, we don't put a space, we just put a capital for the start of the second word, third word, etc. And I'm going to grab this code here, Control X, and put it inside our function. Oops. This should be a tab in. I'll just move that over to the side. Oops. Okay, so hopefully you can see now we have function, and we've given, so this code here that changes our text down here, we've given it a name called generate idea. And what we can do now is we can go back to the HTML and say with the button, we can say, I think it's on click, let me just check. Yes, so on click, all one word, all lowercase. Oops, on click equals quotation marks, and we need the name of the function, and the in programming, open and close parenthesis like this means actually run that function, so activate that code. So now you'll notice a couple of things when we save. First of all, over here, it didn't actually automatically run this code, because we've put it inside a function. Functions will only run when we ask them to be run, or call the function as it's called. So generate idea will do this. So now hopefully we've set the on-click behavior of this button to be generate idea. So let's test that, fingers crossed. Okay, so now we have a button where when we click it, we get we can replace the HTML in there. In fact, we could have a little bit of fun here. We could say let number, let simply creates a new variable. So let number equal, we'll say 0. And we could say in the function here, we'll just change the inner HTML to whatever the number is, and then number plus equals 1. We can add 1 to the number each time. So now if we hit save, every time we press the button, it will register a higher and higher number. So go and have a play with that. So far I have a button here that when I click the button, I've changed it so it says button pressed, but what I'd really like it to do is pick a random adjective and a random noun and put them together. So the first thing that we need to do is to make a list of adjectives and a list of nouns. Now you'll have to think carefully about how this works for you and your project, because you might be doing a very different random generator. You might like to just copy this one to start with, and then you can change as you go. So we need to make 2 lists. Now remember, in JavaScript we say let when we're making a new variable, or when we're making a new list, etc. I'm going to call my list adjectives equals, and oops, we need, for a list, we need square brackets. Okay, and I'm also going to make another list called nouns. Now, my list of adjectives, I can write words that have to be in quotation marks. The reason for that is that if we're doing text and you don't put it in quotation marks, it thinks it's a variable that you're writing in there. So I'll say angry. I will say, helpful. Also notice there are commas between each one. Friendly, etc. You'll probably notice that pretty soon you'll end up wrapping around and going off the side here. So my suggestion actually is that you probably press enter and tab in and just put every adjective on a new line like this, and then you can put the final closing bracket on the end line like that. So that would probably be the easiest way. So I just quickly paused the video and finished writing out my adjectives and nouns. Now you might like to just start with 3 or 4 and then add more at the end of the project, or you might like to come up with a lot now. It's up to you. Just make sure that you have some adjectives and some nouns and that there's a comma after each one. The last one you don't need a comma after. And don't forget that you need to open and close your brackets. So now we have a list of adjectives and a list of nouns. So please pause, go away and make your list and then come back and we'll show you what to do next. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Your list doesn't have to be as long as this, but the number of different combinations that you can make out of 2 different words is the number in this list times the number in this list. So if you have 5 in one list and 10 in the other, that's 5 times 10, 50 different possibilities. And you'll see that if you add words to the list, the total number of possibilities goes up very, very quickly. Okay, so let's go on to the next step. Now, again, when we've got a big problem, it's good to break it down into small chunks. And so to start with, I'm going to just get it so that when we click the button here, it just takes the first item from this list and the first item from this list and puts it up here. Then we can worry about getting random items. So what we're going to do is, in here, I'm going to I'll tab in, we're going to create an adjective variable. So let adjective. Now remember, we have a variable called adjectives, which is a whole list, but adjective will just be one adjective. Let adjective equal, how do we get the first item of the list? The way we do that is we say adjectives and then use the square brackets and 0. List started 0. So this is the 0th element, this is the first element, this is the second. I know it's a bit weird, but we just need to get used to it. Then we'll say let noun. I'm making a new variable called noun. I just came up with that word myself. You could call it, Eiffel Tower if you wanted to. All one word, please, but up to you. Equals the nouns list, and we're just going to get the first item of that as well. And then I'm going to make a new variable called idea, and this will be the total idea. So this will be the 2 words joined together. So I'm going to say it equals adjective plus, in quotation marks, a space, because I'll need a space between the 2 words, plus noun. So if you use the plus with numbers, it will add it up. But if you use the plus with strings of letters, it will just join them together or concatenate them together, as it's called. So the final thing that we're going to do now is we're going to set this HTML element to whatever the idea is. So just to be clear, imagine that we're making a box called adjective, and inside that box we're placing the first element of this list, which will be angry. Then as a noun, we're making a box called noun, and inside the box we're placing the first element of the nouns, which will be alpacas. We're then making another box called idea, and in there we're placing the adjective plus a space plus a noun, and then we're setting the HTML to that idea. So adjective, noun, idea, those aren't parts of JavaScript, they're just names that we've come up with for variables, which just helps us store a piece of information. So let's see if that works. So we hit save, and then we hit generate, and it says angry alpacas. So now if I change this from a 0 to 2, what would we expect to get? So we go up to the adjective, 0, 1, 2. It should be friendly alpacas. So I will save that, and it is friendly alpacas. So the final thing that we need to do is to not set it to the second or 0th element of the list. We need to set it to a random one. Now, JavaScript, unfortunately, doesn't have a really nice, easy way like Python does of getting a random item from a list. So I've had to make a little function for you, and I'm going to post it in the video link description. If that doesn't work for some reason, you can very carefully copy it off the screen here. I'm not going to go into detail to explain it. It's really beyond the scope of what we're doing here. But basically, this function that I've made called randomChoice, you just enter the list in here and it will give you a random element out of that list. So copy that out of the video description into here underneath, and then we can change it here. We'll say that adjective equals a random choice from the adjectives. Yep. And this is a random choice from the nouns. And hopefully, when I save, fingers crossed, this will work. And it seems to be, which is good. So, like I said, copy and paste this, or copy it if you need to, and go and add some more to your list here, and make sure that you've got everything working and looking fantastic, and then you can hit save, set as base, and this will be your final link. You can type, don't forget, you can type show at the end to see your web page in all its glory, full screen.